Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It is the 18th of August 2025, and this is going to be a fairly quick discussion off of the back of the Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska last week. As you'll know, I like to let the dust sort of settle following any major event, if you even want to call this a major event. So Trump meeting Putin, their little bromance last week. I suppose it's a major event for many, so let's just call it that for now. Guys, I'm just going to throw up a couple of sort of articles and some photos, but I'm just going to get straight to the point because we haven't really got time to mess about with any sort of clickbait or any of that jazz. Right, straight into it. I know that this meeting and the calls these world leaders have sort of been making over the last few months is, well, in my view, this is a show. Whether that is, in view of diplomacy, strength, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to talk about the planes landing and the rolling out of the red carpets and the security and the way both leaders sort of conducted themselves, body language and all the rest of that shit. Honestly, if this was a real scenario and not only for show, then it just wouldn't have happened. The security aspect with little to no sort of preparations tells me that this meeting was agreed some time ago. But we only really got told about it, I suppose, within a matter of days. So my guess is that was, that's been arranged way before it was announced on the sort of public stage, shall we say. So I'm just going to go through some top stories as a result of that meeting. So over the last couple of days, we're reading, actually, let's bring something up. We've been reading, it's now up to Zelenskyy to reach some kind of ceasefire. Of course, it's now up to Zelenskyy, but I can't even see Zelenskyy and Putin in the same room together anytime soon. Trump fails to secure Ukraine deal. Honestly, if there's people out there actually believing that there was going to be some kind of deal being struck, agreed, and signed off this week or last week, then, well, anyway, say no more. What else are they saying? We didn't get there, says Trump, after Putin sort of meeting falls short of its normal sort of schedule time. So I think it finished a lot sooner than people maybe anticipated. I've mentioned this in a couple of videos over the last month, and I don't think Trump is well. I know what is he, 78, 79 years old now, I think. And you can see that this new level of stress is sort of testing him whilst he struggles to navigate his way through I'm going to call them uncharted waters, because that's what it seems. He seems uncomfortable with this whole Putin and Russian sort of situation. When he came off of the plane on Friday, was that when they had their meeting in Alaska? He was walking down the red carpet and he was all over the place. That's not to say that there's anything wrong. It's just that he was all over the place. And when Putin came off the plane, he walked in a straight line. There was a short press conference afterwards, sort of many questions aimed at Putin specifically, who sort of he seemed a little sort of taken back by the frenzied vultures, that being the journalists, of course. Trump didn't look happy at all. His face just, in my view, he just had failure written all over it. See, Trump is a businessman, and I've said that a few times before. I don't really need to be telling you this, really, but he's a businessman, and we can see that he's out of his comfort zone with this whole war in Russia, the whole situation. He doesn't want it. Yeah, I actually believe he doesn't want it, but I don't know. It could all be a show. I don't want it, and most other people don't want it. Except of course Putin. But the reality is that this one is not one that's going to be resolved in the corporate boardroom, and they're going to have to resolve this, I think, on the battlefield. I think that's where this is going to be sort of resolved. Now, this press conference, it was a very short press conference. I was actually kind of taken back by, how quickly the media sort of hit Putin with all these questions and Putin's kind of reactions. What I've done is I took some I took some pictures actually. of his facial. Sorry about the quality of the stills. They're not that very. They're not very good. But these are the sort of and this only went on for a couple of minutes. But this was Putin's facial expressions, and this was not to Trump. This was the journalist asking sort of pretty direct questions that he's probably not used to. Um, and I'm not going to bite that he wasn't understanding the English and stuff like that. He's a well-educated fellow, and he's he knows English pretty well. But he was I don't know if he was I don't know whether he was just kind of taken back by the direct questions, because he's obviously not used to that coming from reporters, certainly in Russia. Otherwise, he'd have them sort of banged up or assassinated. But just look at these pictures. Look, this is the guy that's invaded another country. He's put over 1 million of his own people through through the meat grinder, or through through the battlefield, whatever you want to call it. And this is the guy that we're sort of expecting to come to the table and go, okay, listen, guys, let's call it a day. Let's have a ceasefire and all the rest of it. Trump, on the other hand, like I said, looked very, very uncomfortable with the whole thing. He didn't have much to say during this session. Anyway, I'm going to get rid of that. Uh, I don't know if you guys have sort of seen it, and you've read the feedback from mainstream and all the rest of it. There's actually not much to come out of it. Absolutely nothing came out of that meeting, to be honest with you. I knew that was going to be the case. Putin looks like he was enjoying himself, and Trump just looked like he'd had enough of the whole the whole uncontrollable business deal, because he's got no control over this at all. He's out of his depth, and it's a good job he's got sort of sort of professionals and advisors around him. Otherwise he'd be finished. But let's not get sidetracked, and let me just tell you what I think. The European theatre and the overall sort of battlefield is a stage. Both sides, that being Russia and NATO, not Ukraine, will be having it out. Remember, Ukraine is sort of sadly the proxy, with NATO preparing for a much larger sort of conflict or war. I'm I'm not going to get into the sort of into the business of the assets, and in terms of assets that are being positioned all over Europe. But it is a forever changing European landscape, and it has been over the last 3.5 years in terms of military assets. But all the signs and signals are there for us all to see. Let's look at what's been happening over the last couple of weeks, though. Putin and Trump sort of falling out with each other on the political stage. We got Trump making threats to Putin about ending the war. Trump giving Russia, should we say, ultimatums and deadlines. But then they've been doing that with each other for the duration of the year, the war, really, for 3.5 years. These ultimatums come out only to be changed the day after, and then we eventually get to see the pair of them sort of shaking hands in Alaska. But I'm going to point this out. So concerning point number one for me is actually Putin agreeing to meet with Trump in Alaska. That leads me to believe that this meeting, I think, was arranged a long time ago. That it was just too quick. It was too quick, and we're talking about two world leaders of the two superpowers, and rocking up on an iceberg and having a little meeting. It's just the whole thing just doesn't seem right. You had the flyover of the American stealth bomber accompanied by some F-35s as well. A show of force and strength, do you think? Nah, that was more like intimidation. So that's the Americans intimidating the Russians, really. Not that Putin looked even in the slightest intimidated, but it was said that the meeting would go on for much of the day. I think they were estimating between 6 and 9 hours at some point, and it lasted no more than 3 hours. That's not enough time really to talk about anything meaningful when having to sort of factor in translations for those that don't speak English and or sort of Russian between the two sort of parties, shall we say. So we had Trump clapping Putin like he was some kind of celebrity. Everything about this meeting is concerning. It's like some last ditch attempt to, I don't know, just get something agreed, sort of knowing full well that this is going in one direction and one direction only. It's the political bullshit. Really, that's what it is. Politics is all BS. And when I say that, guys, I mean the information that they give the people, the masses, you and I, that's all bullshit. These press conferences, these statements, all of this social media posts, and it's just everything really, especially when Trump is involved. The Americans are sort of masters of deception, misperception, and misinformation anyway. So they're playing everyone against one another, really for their own national gains. And that's why nobody can trust them. So I'm just going to show you these three articles. I'm not going to go into them and kind of read through them. Next time in Moscow, 5 takeaways after Trump and Putin's Alaska summit. There was a couple of points in here that I was going to read. I'm going to be honest with you. When I read through these, it's just more rubbish. Of course, there's going to be speculation. There's going to be analysts and various other sort of professionals and people out there, making assumptions and trying to gauge what's actually happening here and what it all means and stuff like that. I was going to go through a couple of these articles. I'm not going to bother. I wanted to keep this short. I just want to sort of get the message across, really, and I don't want to be sort of wasting your time. Because there's other things kind of happening here, and I kind of just want to try and point that out. We've got to remember today, guys, that the Europeans and Zelenskyy are sort of meeting with Trump. They and I, all hope that there's something's going to come out of this, whether it's some kind of peace plan off the back of the Putin sort of wanting Ukraine to be Russian. Good luck with that. Do you know what's happening at today's meeting? Does anyone know what's actually happening at this meeting today between the Europeans? I mean, the Europeans have turned up to back Zelenskyy because they're not going to have him mugged off by Trump on the political stage like last time. So they're all there to back him. Because remember, guys, this is not America's problem, really. This is ours. If you live in Europe, that is, it's on our doorstep. So although it's nice to know that we could have America sort of backing us, and they're a superpower and all the rest of it. Trump and America have got to be mindful of what this actually means and what's actually happening. And for Trump to forget about it being some kind of sort of business deal. Right. I'll tell you what I think they're going to be talking about today. They're going to be talking about NATO's next move. Is NATO ready? Are we ready to sort of take on the middle game of the war to the next stage? So remember, guys, the first 3 years was the opening moves of the war. This is the middle game now, which is, I've said for some time now, this is when NATO will be introduced into the conflict, and then it's all on. All bets are off, and it's game on. The real stage, the critical sort of spark that ignites in Europe, and that's what's going to happen. Is Poland and Lithuania ready to deal with? This is what I think that they're going to be talking about over there in DC. So is Poland and Lithuania ready to deal with Belarus and Kaliningrad? Is Estonia and Latvia poised for possible attack? Are Finland, Sweden, and who else is up there? Norway? Are they ready to take out Russian targets in the Northern Hemisphere? And quite frankly, NATO, the EU, and others are there, I think, to confirm that this is all about to go fucking sideways. So if anyone thinks that there was some kind of success or some kind of good that came out of Trump and Putin's meeting, I think you'd be sadly mistaken. I wish I was wrong, and I don't know. I could be totally wrong, and I hope I am. But that was a disaster, guys. It was kind of like just the one last show before we all go for it, and then Trump is going to be trying to say to Zelensky today, listen, let me ask you one more time. Do you want to let Putin keep that territory? If we let him keep the territory, he might call it off. Anyway, last ditch attempts. Okay, that's it. But European leaders are going to be behind Zelensky saying, listen, Putin he's got a reputation for invading. He doesn't give a shit, and he's coming. So it's on our doorstep, and we'll back you, even if America don't. And the real issue with all of this is Putin has an agenda. He's already put his cards on the table. He told the West a long time ago what he wants. And quite frankly, he's made it clear that there's no room for negotiations, and Putin's requirements can't even begin to work. It's either his way or no way. So that doesn't work. If you let Russia keep even some of the territory that they've stolen thus far, that's going to be a loss, not just for Ukraine, but for the whole of Europe. Not letting Ukraine join NATO, well, that just can't even that can't even be a case now. That's silly, because it would be done to secure Ukraine from further illegal invasions from its neighbours. So it would have to become a member of NATO. Ukraine will become a member of NATO. I'm sure of that at some point. Suggesting that Ukraine be completely demilitarized is just not happening either. And all of these demands are clear indications of intent. So as the opposite side, just for now, let's call it the West, or at least NATO. All of these demands are direct threats to the alliance. NATO cannot be seen to be giving, giving into any such demands from Russia or anybody, especially if the people, making those demands are the ones that are illegally invading another country. In short, I think Putin wants Ukraine to be recognized as a Russian sovereignty over Ukraine. Well, he does. He's already said so himself. But over Ukrainian regions such as Crimea, what's the other ones? Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and also Kherson, as well as Ukraine agreeing to demilitarization, neutrality, no foreign military involvement, and new elections, obviously going to be orchestrated by Russia. So essential. They amount to what they call capitulation. Basically, that's what that is. That's an agreement in time of war for the surrender of a hostile armed force, or a body of troops, or even a town or territory. That's basically what that is. That's what Russia wants. They want Ukraine to surrender, and that's it. I was reading some comments on a couple of other channels earlier. Let me just see what this next one is. Yeah, I was reading some comments on I won't say the channels earlier. I've come to the conclusion that there are so many people still out there on a totally different planet right now. How the meeting between Trump and Putin was positive, some have said. Good things will come out of this. Oh, and some now believe actually that the end of the Ukraine war is close. It's near. I'm not sure of the caliber of people watching my content on this channel. It does seem that we all seem to be on the same page, thankfully. I might only have, I don't know, what is it, 100 subscribers, but I feel that I've got the right people following, like-minded, and I would much rather have that than, let's say, a few thousand or a few 100,000 subscribers and who are not quite on the same page. It doesn't matter. I can't choose who the viewers are going to be and stuff like that, but I'm quite confident that you guys that are watching some of this content, we're hopefully we're on the same page. The reason why I'm concerned, well, actually not concerned because I'm already aware of what's happening, but actually, guys, can I just switch this a minute? I just want to ask you this, okay? I'm just going to get straight to the point. The state of play at the moment is as follows, and this is how it is. For anyone not aware of the things happening outside of their towns, they need to just listen to just this bit, okay? Russia invaded Ukraine 3.5 years ago, and they've gained 18% of the territory so far. We've had Russia invade Crimea, or Ukraine again, back in 2014, and they now have total control over Crimea. Russia believes that Ukraine is Russian, should be Russian, and they want to make that happen, and they confirm that status. NATO, Europe, and the West cannot and will not be seen to be allowing that to happen, not just once, but twice, on our doorstep. Russia are not going to give up any of the land that they've taken already. Okay, so that 18%, they're not going to be giving that back. There's no way that's not happening. And Ukraine want their land back, quite rightly so. So that lot alone is a problem, which I think can only be resolved through conflict. Russia have to be kicked out, and unfortunately, Ukraine can't do that alone. Then we have the NATO membership for Ukraine. This is an easier option actually. NATO can say, well, okay, well we'll consider, we'll not consider Ukraine's membership into the alliance. But what are Ukraine going to get back as a security guarantee? There has to be, there has to be give and take. If you turn around and say, okay, right, then we're not going to allow them to join NATO, but what security guarantees can you offer? Well, Putin's going to say that's okay. We'll have the re-elections. Anyway, you know where that's all going. But then there's this one, the most absurd of all. So for Ukraine to demilitarize and not receive neither security nor military support for the security of its country. Now, what the fuck does that even mean? This is all so one-sided. They're almost conditions actually setting up the West to fail. That's how I see this. Those conditions are so unrealistic. It's an insult and it's embarrassing. So just bear them things in mind, okay? And you've got to ask yourself, so where does that leave us? So for all of Trump's strengths and weaknesses, I don't know him as a person, nor does anybody else that I know. But he's portraying an image of a peacemaker on the public domain and the political stage. And when the powers to be told Trump that he'll become the US president, because to be fair, he would have been the best person, or he is the best person to make some of these difficult decisions, even though they are becoming a little bit too difficult for him to make. It just makes me and others sort of think, what kind of dirt have they got on Trump to keep him doing, doing all this? Whether it's the Epstein files or liking kids or being labelled as a pedo, it's probably enough dirt actually, to be honest with you. But that shit seems to be coming out on social media and everything anyway. Anyway, this is not a conspiracy channel. Let's move on. I wish that I didn't have to sort of say this, but there is only one way to deal with Putin and Russia at the moment. And unfortunately, that's going to be by force and kick the fuckers out of Ukraine. That means NATO pushing Russia back to its own borders, where pretty much where they belong. For 1,268 days now, I think it is 268 today. I think I've been tracking this war. It's actually been like studying for a degree here in the UK, and if there was some good news, to give you on the conflict front, then I would be at the front of the queue and shouting from the rooftops that I would be at the front of the queue, giving you good news. I don't want this to be bad news. It's a reality. It's the reality of what's going on. Hence the reason why we're talking about being prepared. Some good news that can sort of come out of this is making you aware and just priming you to go and get yourselves prepared. This is an open question, and I suppose it can mean many sort of different things for different people. Everybody's different set of circumstances, all the rest of it. I just want to make this promise to you, though. Once you start preparing, and those preps, you know, when you start prepping, certainly when you start as somebody that's new to it, they have to start with you as a person. I've said this in a couple of videos. Once you've got your head around the possibility of life becoming, shall we say, uncomfortable, and you can come to terms that some of this shit could affect you and your family. You're going to want nothing more than to be going off and preparing. That in itself will make you feel so much better, and that will happen immediately as well. When you start getting your preps together, I'm nearly finished, guys. When you get your preps together, just getting your mind into the right headspace. You start reading and watching whatever content that you feel fit, that suits you as a person, your personalities. Taking on some new skills. With the gathering of some kit and supplies. Again, depending on budget and stuff like that, I can confidently say you will feel a lot better with it. Any preparation you do, you'll sit back and you'll be in a better place. I can promise you that. When people talk about the war, or you see it on the TV, you'll be able to sit there and just say to yourselves, "Yeah, I know exactly what that all that means, and I know what what I'm going to be doing." for me and my family during any of those scenarios. That position alone, without a doubt, is going to make you feel better, I promise. Especially if you're a parent or if you're looking after somebody or even responsible for others, even if it's pets, being prepared in that situation is going to be a million times better than not. So, guys, I hope I'm wrong about all of this. But when, my decisions, forecasts and speculations, it's basically everything I'm kind of seeing and feeling and talking about is off of the back of Putin and what he wants. And he's prepared, to do whatever it takes to get it. We've got to think about the history, his broken promises and everything else, Putin. It's just hard to see this any other way. But let's just hope I'm wrong. That's it, guys. I'm not going to go on about that meeting on Friday. It was meaningless. It was irrelevant. In terms of the content, the actual meeting happening is more than relevant. There's a reason. There's a underlying reason why that happened. And it's that we need to be mindful of, but we also need to be mindful of, right, if we're convinced that they come away from that and it just looked like Putin was enjoying himself and he was just having a day out. I don't see him. Well, there's nothing that came out of it that was positive. So straight after that, we've now got Trump, Zelensky, and all European leaders talking as we speak now. So what do you think they're talking about? Well, what will they be talking about now? There can only be one thing. That they're left with no choices. I don't say correct in the comments, guys. If I'm wrong, then or if you think I'm wrong, please let me know because I don't really talk to too many people other than you guys out there about this because you can't have this conversation with 85% of the people on the street. They'll just run away. They can't deal with it. So if it'd be interesting actually to hear your views, some people's views, and just even for people to come back and say, listen, I think there might be some good coming out of this, or they've met today to talk about some ceasefire, or it's just something to sort of bounce off, really. So all comments are welcome anyway. Right, that's it. That was just a short thing. It was just I wanted to get it out the way. It's what everyone's talking about, and I just kind of wanted to put my view on where I think that meeting on Friday went, and the one that they're having today is going. Have a good day, guys. Have a good week. I will be back in a day or so, probably tomorrow, with a long-awaited food dehydration plan, which I know some of you will be sort of very, you'll get a lot of use out of this because I've created a menu specifically for dehydrating. There's 60 meals on there, so one meal for the meals that I've got on there 60 days, so that's a meal for 2 months. When I say meal, that's dinner. That's a main meal, and no 2 days are the same. Anyway, I've broken it down into what you would do for a dehydration plan. It took me weeks to get the spreadsheet going. I will make sure that you get a copy of that spreadsheet and hopefully you can get some use out of that. Take care, guys, and I'll be back tomorrow.